What's happening, everybody? Spiffman255 here with you again today, and been a while. It's been gone a while. I got married and been working, been pretty busy. So here we're back in the saddle, and I'm thinking for this video we're just gonna do some catch up on some stuff that I've kind of missed, some big ticket news items, I guess you call them, that I found particularly interesting that occurred in my absence. So we're just gonna kind of rapid fire through some of this stuff. Not necessarily in chronological order, just as I kind of remember them. But, yeah, here we go. Here's the first big one. The Kavanaugh thing. The Kavanaugh thing was a vast, grand spectacle in how politicking occurs these days, in my opinion. And, on the one side, you had, your kind of normie, average conservatives who brought up a guy, he's got a pretty clean track record and this and that, and then on the other side you had this crazy identitarian far left, just insanity. That's what it looked like, was insanity. And I'm very familiar with where the sentiment comes from with the Kavanaugh thing, but it was one of those things where it just seemed too convenient and it seemed too staged. It was a spectacle. It was a spectacle to try to make this man look bad. And I found myself wondering that if not Brett Kavanaugh and whoever else that Donald might have picked to appoint to the Supreme Court, that a similar thing would have happened. Somebody would have tried to dig up something on whoever it may have been, and we would have had maybe not an equal spectacle, but a spectacle nonetheless. And one thing that I find particularly interesting is that from what I understand, several of the women who came forward during the Kavanaugh debacle came forward and basically said they outright lied or were told to lie about the whole thing, with the exception of Miss Blasey Ford, who, from what I understand, got a pretty sizable book deal out of the whole thing. And, you can look at all the facts of the whole thing, and it's just ridiculous. The idea of, hashtag believe women and things like that, I don't necessarily agree with at all times. I think due process is necessary. I think hashtag take these accusations seriously is probably a better way to coin that phrase. But the whole Kavanaugh thing, to me, was just absolutely fascinating, because it really was just a display of how politicking is done in 2018. You don't come out, you don't make an intelligent argument like the fact that Brett Kavanaugh completely and totally supports greater militarization. He completely and totally supports being able to spy on you. Things like that. These were big ticket items that the Democrats could have definitely spoke about, and they could have grilled this man on, but instead they chose to go this route of seemingly just bogus sexual assault back in the 80s. And even if it were true, like, how many people would really care? The state of the way people deal with sexual assault accusations, especially old ones, like, hell, it took damn near 70 women to come forward for Bill Cosby. So I don't know why they thought this would work with Brett Kavanaugh. It just made the Democrats look ridiculous. And as this article here says, the Kavanaugh debacle may very well have cost the Democrats the Senate. And I agree with that sentiment, and we'll get more into that later. Alright, so the next thing that I think I'm going to go with is these migrant caravans that are coming up from Honduras and other places in Central America. And this has been another one of those things where you can look at it and you can definitely see how, no matter what it is, they'll politicize it, and they'll try to polarize people on it. And when I say they, I mean everyone. I mean all the politicians. And it just, even pundits, people, random people on Facebook, everyone will politicize these things. So from what I see, on the one side, you've got certain people basically saying that these people should be allowed in because they're looking for a better life, and if you don't like that, then you must hate brown people. And then on the other hand, I've got other people who are sitting there saying, well, these people don't deserve in, they're basically monstrous, they're probably filled with MS-13 or other cartel member plants, and they're going to come in and be violent, and they're going to take our gerbs. Well, as with everything, the reality of the situation is it's probably somewhere in between, right? And it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, these migrant caravans. And now I'm hearing word that the one of the last ones coming actually have weapons, and Donald Trump sending 15,000 members of the military to the southern border to stop the caravan. Like, all I can say is no matter what happens, it's going to be bad optics. Like, it's going to be one of these things where either you're going to get one side who's snapping pictures of these migrants and these people in these caravans being violent, or, on the other hand, you're going to get photos of members of the military roughing up these migrants, and you're going to find pictures like this one right here. Look at the little kid. Look at the sadness in his eyes. All the hope, all the potential in this child to be just looking for a better life. It's like, you're not tugging at my heartstrings. These motherfuckers could have made their country better than it is. And I know it sucks. And ultimately, honestly, facetiously, but it sounds to me like Honduras and the rest of these shitholes in Central America could really use some freedom. Like, I'm not saying arm freedom fighters the way we tend to do every single time. No, we're not. No, don't go help them. Go make them be better than they are. And it just is what it is. I mean, what the fuck? Why not? Gloves are off at this point. I mean, why the fuck not? We're fucking up everything else. Why not? The next one I found absolutely fascinating. You got this guy, Cesar Sayoc. This dude who sent the not bombs to all these politicians and news outlets. This one reeked of suspicion to me, and I'd rather not say one way or the other. I don't want to try to state as fact anything that happened with this whole thing, but the thing about it is that the bombs he sent, quote-unquote bombs he sent, were not actually explosives, right? They were not meant to explode. At worst, they could have been considered maybe an incendiary device. They might have poofed into fire when somebody opened them, but even then, the likelihood that they would have triggered was pretty low. So, I don't know if this person was actually actively trying to harm anyone, or if he was just that incompetent. And I mean, it's hard to tell at this point. Everybody's gone fucking insane. And it just, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this, but it definitely was bad optics because no matter what happens, this dude had to be a crazy Trump supporter. And turns out he was. If you check out his van, I don't know if they got a picture of his van here. There's one way down there. It's covered in Trump stickers and propaganda, anti-left propaganda, things like that. And fortunately, they caught the guy. Fortunately, nobody was harmed or seriously injured, and Donald Trump has disavowed the man, and he faces almost 50 years in prison if convicted. So, interesting, bad optics. Speaking of optics, we could go the other way. We could say screw your optics and talk about this guy who shut up this synagogue up in Pittsburgh. He said he wanted all Jews to die, and it just, he was a National Socialist. What does it say here? It's CNN, good old CNN. Mr. Bowers, believe acted alone, faces 29 federal charges, some of which punishable by death. A bunch of people died, man. And this ultimately resulted in Gab.ai being shut down because it was on Gab, and because they evidently are responsible for something that he did, and I don't get that. It's like, oh, you allowed him on here. It's like, well, do you really think him being on social media was the reasoning for his shooting up a synagogue? No, I think he pretty much just probably hated the Jews. And you know, again, people are going insane. Like, what is up with this? Just yesterday, I think, we had a nightclub shot up over in California. It is retarded how people are just going nuts. And I honestly, truthfully believe that it has a lot to do with the polarization politically in this country. I think it has a lot to do with identitarians polarizing between each other on the far left and on the extreme right. And honestly, I believe that these are very small fringe groups of individuals who just happen to get a lot of press because it's flashy. You know, you're going to get people to click on an article that basically says, why can't we hate men? I did a video on that a couple months ago. And when you say, you know, all white people are bad or something like that, that's stupid. It's stupid, but it's going to get people to click on it. It's going to build outrage. And for these kind of assholes, all that does is rile them up. And, you know, on the other hand, it makes them really happy because everybody starts to have a racial consciousness, a white identity, and which doesn't even fucking exist. And it's just stupid. It's just stupid. We really need to come back to some kind of closer middle ground. And this shit is just getting ridiculous. And so, let's go look at the midterm elections. Alright, so with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the big one. We got the midterm election results here. And, looks to me like, you know, there's still a couple states that are kind of out thus far, still counting some shit, but the way it's looking right now is that it's a pretty good bet that the Republicans held the Senate and actually gained a couple extra seats in the Senate, and that the Democrats took the House, which is expected. You know, this happens in most elections. People see the president come up and he gets all this kind of power. He runs in hard charging right at the beginning of his term, and you know, he starts signing off executive orders and stuff like that. And it seems to me like the American people in general just kind of look at him and be like, you know, this guy might be getting a little carried away, and they kind of flip the legislative branch on the sitting president. And we keep that maintenance of that power check. But one thing that's particularly interesting is that the opposition party did not gain nearly as many seats in the House as they expected. So their blue wave was more like a blue piss in the ditch. And I don't know. I think they're a little worried, and I'm a little worried that all that's going to happen now is that nothing's going to happen. Because no matter what happens, the Democrat majority in the House is just going to try to stonewall everything that tries to get passed. You know, I don't necessarily support Trump's tax reform, for example. I mean, honestly, in the short term, it's going to put a lot more money in my pocket, but I've read the economic projections of it, and it's in the long term, it's going to hurt people like me. You know, I don't make an incredible amount of money at my real job, so it's eventually going to hurt people like me, the working class that doesn't make enough for welfare, or makes too much for welfare, but doesn't make enough for investment, right? The most investment I could do is in my 401k. It's not like I got extra cash laying around. So it worries me that basically now that we have an opposition, that pretty much just nothing's going to get done. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. And the last thing I want to check while we're sitting here is I wanted to talk about Diablo Immortal. And I never pay money to look at BlizzCon or anything like that, but I always enjoy looking up what goes on there, right? I like to see the new releases, the hot takes and stuff like that. Like, most of these people pay money to go to the convention to just have that experience of the convention, and I really don't understand the people who pay money to do BlizzCon online, because I I mean, a couple days after the convention, all this shit's up on the internet for free anyway, right? Like, I'm about to go in here and watch this trailer. But the fascinating part was the absolute outrage over Diablo Immortal. Now, I want to make it very clear that I've played Diablo since it first released on PC way back in the 90s. I remember getting a box, and I remember thinking to myself and talking to my stepdad and stuff and being like, oh man, you need a Pentium processor to play this game. God damn, that's some fancy shit. This is powerful. Yeah, literally, this game came out right as the Pentium processor was being put into computers. And so yeah, I have a lot of love for this franchise. And Diablo Immortal, you know, I'm okay with Blizzard taking 10 years to release a game. I really am. A lot of people didn't like Diablo 3. I love Diablo 3. I still sit down and play it. It's great to kill time, right? Once you get to the point where you've gotten past the story and all this stuff, and it just kind of starts to be repetitive. You know, Diablo 3 implemented a lot of things in adventure mode and things like that, that I could just sit down and play that game as a mind-numbing, just relaxation thing. It's like meditation to play Diablo 3 for me. And I wasn't exactly expecting a Diablo 4 announcement, right? Like, I wasn't expecting that for a couple more years. But then you get this build up that some Diablo news is coming. Diablo news is coming. And it's like, alright, cool, man, that'll be alright. And so then we get Diablo Immortal. And I popped on here just to look at the the sheer ratio of like to dislike, and a lot of people, when this first came out, they were reporting something like 280k. It's up to 560k dislikes. We have 500,000 dislikes on this video. And, you know, I was on my Facebook, and one of my buddies actually went to BlizzCon physically, and he said, Diablo Immortal, it's not bad. And a couple of commentators I've seen who actually played the demo said, you know, it's actually pretty decent for a mobile game. But I think that a lot of people are pissed is that the fans feel like Blizzard's selling out, obviously, and mobile, they claim that they're going to mobile to catch an Asian audience, and this type of shit, and I'm just like, you know what? Fuck you. Everybody's selling out. And it pisses me off, you know? One of my favorite developers used to be BioWare, and they're selling out. I do not trust that Anthem is not going to have microtransactions in it. I just don't trust it. I don't trust EA. I was pissed when BioWare sold that to EA. I don't trust Blizzard, you know? Everybody pretty much just assumes that Diablo Immortal is going to be funded through microtransactions. I hate microtransactions. Everybody does. Nobody likes them. And the only reason that I hate them is because all it is a cash grab. You implement a pay-to-win element, and the game becomes unplayable for people like me who refuse to utilize microtransactions. I absolutely refuse. And I will not do that. I will not pre-order a game that will have microtransactions in it. And I also probably won't pre-order a game where somebody comes out and says, hey, by the way, this game won't have microtransactions in it. Aren't we doing good? It's like, yeah, way to not be a scumbag. But, Diablo Immortal, like, the thing about it is, I'm not as outraged as some people seem to be. You know, I play a mobile game from time to time. I played Fallout Shelter. I played, some of the little castle defense games or whatever, but I'll probably download it. I'll probably play it for a little while, and then, since I'll realize that it's probably pay to win through a microtransaction system, I'll probably just uninstall it and stop playing it. Every so often, might reinstall it and play it again. And that's just how I am with mobile games. I don't mind doing it if it's just a little waste of time for me to do for 10 minutes while I'm waiting for work to start. But, that shit's absolutely crazy. There's plenty of more shit that I could get into, but this video's already getting kind of long. You know, Tucker Carlson's home was attacked by Antifa. And just crazy shit like that. The kill stream was taken down. That's neat. But, yeah, man. Like, the whole world has gone insane, and I'm, honestly just sitting back and just laughing at it all at this point. And I can't wait for the apocalypse to just delete the human species. But anyway, glad to be back. I'm gonna try to get a video out to you guys sometime in the relatively near future. I'm writing a kind of a big thing on political power. Should be pretty neat. The research has been very, very interesting. But, yeah, glad to be back, and hope to see you guys again real soon. Until then, love you guys. Be good to each other.